Hi. The 5 most common questions I receive regarding the findings section in a qualitative research paper are the following. How do I organize the findings section? Should I include everything and anything? How much raw data can I introduce or include in it? What to do with negative or contradictory findings? And finally, can I include my interpretations or opinion? Let's start with the first one. How do I organize the findings section? I think the key over here is organization. As long as there is a particular organization, you are safe. The issue and the problem comes in when individuals present their findings with a hodgepodge of ideas. In qualitative research, we have a lot of data that we end up collecting and a lot of information that we want to share. Unless it's organized, it becomes harder for us to report it and for the reader to understand it. So, as long as there is an organization that is guided by your own personal understanding or the research questions or your personal narrative style, then you're fine. Some of the most common ways to organize the research findings section are, first off, the thematic organization. So if you have identified 3 or 4 main themes, you can organize your findings section based on those themes. Take each theme separately, explain what it is, the sub-themes in it, while providing an explanation of what it is and what it reflects or identifies. Another one is to align it with your research subsidiary questions. So you start off with a general research question, and most of the time we have sub-questions or subsidiary questions. It's very helpful, and many researchers find it is helpful to actually go through aligning the findings section with that set of subsidiary questions. So you can take each one alone and reflect on the themes or the findings that relate to it. The third key way is to make use of headings and subheadings. Whether you are doing it with alignment with research question, or you're doing it thematically, or you are doing it with pros, cons, challenges, and opportunities, whatever organization you are making use of, take advantage of the formatting style that you are following with regards to your paper and include headings and subheadings. Those are visuals that allow individuals to follow your thought and for you to be able to better present it. Question number 2. Should I include everything and anything? As I said earlier, qualitative research and anybody who has collected data through qualitative research, whether it is interviews, observations, artifacts, whatever it is, it ends up to be extensive information. And on many occasions, some of that information is meaningless or not relevant to our research question. So best is not to include it and distract the attention of the reader. So first off, relevance is key. If something is not relevant, even if it is a theme that you identified, but it is not relevant to your research question, you don't have to report it because it will only take from the focus of your research question and from the findings that you are trying to present. So unless the information you're including is of relevance and importance, you don't have to include it in your findings section. That's the main criteria. The other one is be balanced. Make use of an adequate amount of information for each theme that you are presenting. So let's say the theme is technical challenges while trying to incorporate technology in education. You don't have to include each and every example of technical challenge that was shared with you in those interviews, especially if you conducted a lot of interviews. It's enough to say that technical challenges refer to challenges that come up based on or arise from issues that relate to software, hardware, and whatnot. Examples, or the most prominent example was internet connectivity and stability versus so on and so forth. You don't really have to explain everything and include everything as long as the idea is there. So balance what you are presenting. And finally, the representative data. Make sure that your themes and the explanation related to it are representative of what you found. Again, you don't really need to explain everything and include everything, but it has to be representative of the main themes that you identified. So I would always recommend put yourself in the shoes of your reader. Will you reach a point where you get bored by what you are reading because it's so extensive? If that's the case, then you have to cut down. Put yourself in the shoes of the reader. By reading this, is the idea clear, or will you have a lot of questions about what do you mean with this or what do you mean with that? If that's the case, then you haven't explained enough, so you need to add a little bit more. One thing that you can do always, give it to somebody who hasn't been involved in the research and ask them to skim through it. Always, feedback is always helpful. Try to get feedback on whether the information is balanced enough, it's clear, yet not overwhelming. Okay? Research question, or the third question, how much raw data should I include? And with raw data, the reference here is to quotes from the actual interviews. Again, we need to use quotes effectively. Unless a quote is really bringing the idea home really well, don't include it. So unless the quote is actually strong enough to inform the reader and support the argument, don't put it just for the sake of having quotations or quotes. Make use of it effectively whenever a quote is of help, when it actually helps you in supporting your decision about the theme, explaining what the theme is all about, and contextualizing your data and your themes in particular. So don't overdo it. For each theme, a couple of quotes, when they are good, are more than enough. Sometimes you might end up with particular themes that you don't have a very spot-on quote for it. You don't have to force it. Do not include something that is just a facelift and nothing more. What to do with negative and contradictory findings? This is actually what is most important in our findings. If everything is in agreement and on one side of the fence, if we can say, then most probably there's no need for any findings and later on discussion, because everyone is in agreement. You can just present it and that's it. However, when there is contradictory or negative findings, these are findings themselves. So yes, you have to acknowledge them, include them in your findings, and definitely highlight how they are contradictory or how do they go against what the majority of your the insights that you have compiled are all about. And definitely you can explore and explain them. Now, on occasions, there are some findings that you get which you didn't end up exploring further or getting clearer, or they're beyond the scope of your research. There's nothing wrong in including them and saying in the discussion later on, these were contradictory or findings that were not very clear, and further research will be helpful in this domain. So always open up for future research. After all, the research cycle that we always talk about starts with a question and always finishes up with more questions, because that's how knowledge is developed and knowledge is created, by following with the findings and highlighting what still needs to be found. The last question is, can I include personal interpretation and opinion in the findings section? In general, findings section is more about what you found and what the data has to say. On many occasions, researchers reflect, especially qualitative research, you'll find some researchers reflecting about their own personal opinion or position with regards to the findings, but that's not the norm. In general, in the findings section, try to limit what you are providing to what the data is saying and not what your own personal opinion or interpretation is all about. That remains to be discussed in or covered in the discussion section, which I'm posting another video for. So I hope that these reflections and insights were helpful for you. As always, if you have further questions that you'd like me to address, please send me a message and I'll make sure to attend to them.